You have been taught to believe that life unfolds in a straight line, that events progress in a neat sequence, that your past pushes you forward and your future waits somewhere ahead. But this is only a habit of perception. It is not the structure of reality. The mind favors straight lines because they are simple to track, yet consciousness does not move this way. Consciousness expands, refracts, reflects, and responds in ways that defy the narrowness of linear progression. And the moment you begin to sense this, even faintly, the landscape of your experience starts to loosen. You are not navigating a timeline. You are navigating a field that reorganizes around your current state, not your remembered past. A field that listens to what you are being now, not what you have been or what you hope to become. When you look closely, you start to see that the idea of a single path stretching forward is an assumption the mind overlays onto something far more fluid. This is why your life has never truly moved in a straight line, even when you believed it did. There were moments that appeared sudden, redirections that came without warning, realizations that shifted your trajectory instantly. These moments were glimpses of how reality actually functions. The belief in linearity creates a sense of distance between you and what you desire, as if you must travel toward it step by step. But distance is a mental artifact. Alignment has no distance. Recognition has no distance. When you release the expectation that things must unfold sequentially, you step into a space where the field can rearrange itself without delay. Not because you forced it, but because you stopped insisting that creation must obey the rules of a timeline. The illusion of the straight line keeps you waiting. It keeps you measuring progress instead of sensing alignment. It keeps you believing that change requires time rather than presence. But the deeper truth is that reality responds to coherence, not chronology. What you feel now, who you are now, what frequency you hold now, these are the actual determinants of what emerges next. Not in a linear next, but in an immediate reflection based on state. As you let go of the conditioned belief that life must unfold incrementally, you begin to experience how fluid your trajectory truly is. You notice that shifts happen through clarity, not effort, through allowing, not forcing, through subtle recognition, not strategic planning. You see that the moment you soften your grip on how things are supposed to unfold, reality has room to reveal the possibilities that were always available, but previously inaccessible through linear thinking. You are not moving through time, you are selecting from potentials. You are not walking a path, you are generating a field. And the more you understand this, the less you feel confined by your history or by imagined limitations. The straight line dissolves and what remains is far more dynamic, a responsive living field that mirrors your state in real time. This is the beginning of remembering how creation actually works. This is the beginning of stepping out of the illusion of straight lines. If you feel this resonates with you, subscribe so you won't miss next important lessons. You have been conditioned to believe that awareness sits inside time, observing events as they unfold one after another. But the truth is far more expansive. Awareness does not live inside sequence. Sequence lives inside awareness. The mind labels events as past, present, and future, but these labels are simply organizational tools, not fundamental realities. Consciousness itself is not moving through time. It is holding all potentials simultaneously, and what you call a timeline is only the portion of the field you are currently tuned to. When you begin to sense this, even subtly, something profound loosens. You stop assuming that life must unfold in a linear order. You stop believing that your future is constrained by your past. You start to recognize that what appears as cause and effect is often state and reflection. The mind interprets reflection as sequence, but consciousness experiences it as immediacy. This changes everything. The field you are navigating is not arranged chronologically. It is arranged vibrationally. It responds not to what you have lived, but to what you are being now. The past is not a chain, and the future is not a destination. They are both interpretations of a single ongoing field of potential. When you operate from the mind alone, you see movement through time. When you operate from awareness, you see selection within possibility. This is why sudden shifts occur in ways that seem to defy logic. They appear miraculous only because you are trying to frame a non-linear field inside a linear narrative. You attempt to track causes when the real movement is happening through resonance. What you call synchronicity is simply the field revealing what you are already tuned to. It is not happening due to a sequence of events, but due to a state of coherence. Awareness touches a frequency, and the field responds instantly, regardless of what should come first. As you expand beyond the mind's attachment to sequence, you sense a more fundamental intelligence at work. You begin to feel that your awareness is not traveling forward, but radiating outward. You begin to notice that potentials are not ahead of you. They are beside you, around you, available now. The delay you once attributed to time was often the result of misalignment, not sequence. When alignment stabilizes, outcomes appear in ways that seem temporally impossible. But they were never dependent on time, they were dependent on resonance. The more you recognize this, the freer you become. You stop trying to predict outcomes based on past patterns. You stop assuming that because something happened before, it must influence what can happen next. The past only persists if your frequency continues to match it. Shift the frequency, and you shift the accessible potentials. Not later. Now. You are not moving forward. You are tuning differently. You are not progressing. You are selecting. And once you accept that consciousness is not bound by chronological order, the entire structure of possibility opens. What once felt fixed becomes fluid. What once felt distant becomes immediate, and what once felt constrained by sequence reveals itself as an infinite field responding to your state of being. The present moment is not a point along a timeline. It is not the thin slice between what has happened and what will happen. It is the only place where reality is actively formed. Everything you call your life emerges from the state you hold now, not from the memories behind you or the imagined scenarios ahead. The mind insists that the present is fleeting, that it is constantly being replaced by the next moment, but awareness knows something different. Awareness recognizes the present as the foundation, the source, the access point through which all potentials become experience. When you understand this, the pressure you place on the future dissolves. You realize that you are not trying to reach something that lies ahead. You are allowing something to emerge from where you stand now. This shift changes the texture of your entire internal world. Instead of striving toward outcomes, you begin feeling for alignment. Instead of trying to control the sequence of events, you tune the frequency that shapes them. You recognize that creation is not about prediction. It is about presence. Most of the struggle you experience comes from the belief that change takes time. You assume that the future will reflect your effort, your planning, your persistence. But the field is responding to your current state, not your timeline. A shift in state alters the trajectory instantly. The external may take a moment to rearrange, but the new path is selected the moment the inner frequency shifts. This means that the most powerful action you can ever take is the recognition of the present as your true point of influence. The present is not small. It is not limited. It is not a pause between events. It is the portal through which reality reorganizes itself. When you are fully in the present, you are fully in your creative power. The mind may tell you that thinking about the past helps you understand yourself, or that anticipating the future helps you shape it. But both are distractions when they pull you out of presence. The past is memory. The future is projection. Only the present is creation. When you bring your awareness into this moment without resistance, Something in the field becomes available that was previously inaccessible. Possibilities that felt distant begin to feel near. Insights arise effortlessly. Solutions appear without effort, and the things you once believed required time begin to align with surprising speed, not because you forced them, but because you stopped placing your power elsewhere. You may notice that this moment contains everything you need to choose your trajectory. You do not have to predict the future. You do not have to resolve the past. You only need to sense what expands you and what contracts you right now. Expansion aligns you with the timeline that reflects your highest state. Contraction signals that you are resisting your own clarity. This is the simplicity of creation. It happens here. It happens now. And when you anchor yourself in the present as the only access point, reality no longer feels like something unfolding ahead of you. It becomes something responding to you, instantly. You have been taught to track your life through hours, days, and years, as if time were the engine moving everything forward. But what actually shapes your experience is not the passage of time. It is the frequency you hold within it. Emotion is the real clock. Emotion is the true measure of movement. Emotion is the signal that instructs the field on what to reflect next. Time does not create change. Frequency does. When you understand this, the relationship you have with your life shifts entirely. You stop waiting for the right moment, the right day, the right alignment of circumstances. You begin to realize that what you feel now is what sets the trajectory, not because emotion manipulates reality, but because emotion reveals your current vibrational position. The field responds to that position instantly, and your timeline adjusts accordingly. The mind reads emotion as a reaction to events. Awareness reads emotion as an indicator of alignment. When you feel expansion, you are touching a frequency that opens doors. When you feel contraction, you are sensing resistance within yourself. These sensations are not commentary on your circumstances. They are guidance in navigating the field. They are telling you which timeline you are aligning with. Expansion draws reality forward in harmony. Contraction pulls you into versions of experience that reflect confusion and misalignment. This is why certain phases of your life felt slow, stagnant, or delayed. It wasn't because time was required for change. It was because your frequency remained constant. Time had nothing to do with the unfolding. Your emotional state had everything to do with it. And when your emotional state shifts, the field begins reorganizing without hesitation. Sometimes the external adjustment appears gradual, but the selection happens instantly. Emotion is not a byproduct. It is a compass. It is a tuning mechanism. It is the language through which the field understands what you are available for. This is why forcing outcomes rarely works. Force usually arises from contraction, and contraction signals misalignment. The field responds accordingly, not because it is withholding anything, but because it mirrors the frequency you are embodying. When you relax into clarity, when you soften into allowing, when you shift into coherence, you send a completely different signal, and the field reorganizes around it. There is a simplicity here that the mind often overlooks. You do not need to track progress through time. You do not need to measure how long something has taken. You only need to feel the frequency you are holding. That frequency is your position in the field. That position is your timeline. And that timeline is selected moment by moment through the emotional quality you embody. Once you begin to treat emotion as guidance instead of commentary, you unlock a different kind of intelligence. You stop trying to calculate outcomes. You start sensing them. You stop trying to force alignment. You start allowing it. This shift accelerates everything, not because the world is changing faster, but because you are no longer waiting for time to do what only frequency can accomplish. Emotion is the real clock, and when you master the clock, you master the trajectory. Effort has been glorified as the engine of change, as if pushing harder, striving more, and accumulating action could bend reality into the shape you desire. But in a nonlinear field, effort is not the mechanism of movement. Recognition is. Clarity is. The subtle shift in inner understanding carries far more influence than any amount of forceful doing. This is not because action is irrelevant, but because action without alignment is friction, and friction does not create new timelines. It only intensifies resistance. When you recognize something deeply, fully, without conflict, the field responds instantly. Recognition is not an intellectual conclusion. It is a vibrational shift. It is the moment when your inner state becomes coherent enough for the field to mirror it. This is why a single moment of genuine clarity can alter the trajectory of your life more than years of grinding effort. Reality does not reorganize around exertion. It reorganizes around coherence. Effort often emerges from the belief that you are separate from what you desire, that you must close the gap through work. But recognition dissolves the gap entirely. When you recognize your alignment with a certain outcome, you tune to the version of yourself who already embodies that reality. The field reflects this identity far more faithfully than it reflects the person who is pushing their way toward it. Force speaks the language of lack. Recognition speaks the language of alreadiness, and the field responds to alreadiness. You may notice that whenever you have tried too hard, things felt stuck, heavy, unresponsive. That heaviness was not a sign of failure. It was a sign of misalignment. The contraction told you that your frequency and your intention were not matched. Yet when you have moments of quiet certainty, when something becomes obvious without strain, doors open without effort, opportunities appear without seeking, solutions emerge without calculation. This is the power of recognition. It bypasses the linear route entirely. Your timelines shift the moment your identity shifts, and identity shifts through recognition. Not through willpower, not through forcing yourself to believe something, but through seeing clearly what is already true within you. Recognition removes resistance. It allows the field to reorganize because it eliminates the contradiction between what you desire and what you believe you are. In that coherence, the shift becomes inevitable. You are not meant to struggle your way into new realities. Struggle is a symptom of forgetting your nature. You are meant to recognize your resonance with them. That recognition is the tuning fork that activates the alignment. When you stop forcing, you stop pushing against the field. When you stop pushing, the field can move. And it moves in ways that appear effortless because they arise from harmony, not strain. The more you value recognition over effort, the more fluid your path becomes. You begin to trust that clarity is creative. You begin to sense that knowing is directional. You begin to feel that your inner state is the true initiator of every shift. And in that understanding, you step into a different relationship with creation, one where timelines respond to your clarity, not your struggle. Contrast is not a disruption in your path. It is the mechanism that reveals it. Every moment of tension, friction, or emotional discomfort is not evidence that you are off course, but guidance pointing you toward deeper alignment. You are never punished by contrast. You are clarified by it. The field is always responding to your state, and contrast helps you sense that state with greater precision. It sharpens your awareness of what expands you and what contracts you. It refines your understanding of the frequency you are actually holding, not the one you believe you are holding. This refinement is essential because you cannot select a coherent timeline without knowing your true resonance. Unwanted experiences do not appear to derail you. They appear to reveal subtle pockets of misalignment you may not have noticed otherwise. The moment you feel contraction, you are being shown that the frequency you are embodying is out of sync with what you desire. This is not a failure, it is information, and information is power in a vibrational universe. Without contrast, you would not develop the clarity required to choose your trajectory consciously. Expansion feels like yes, contraction feels like no. These signals shape your path more accurately than any mental strategy ever could. As you begin to see contrast as guidance rather than obstruction, your relationship to your experiences changes completely. You stop resisting discomfort and start listening to it. Resistance says something is wrong. Awareness says something is being revealed. When you listen from awareness, the very sensation that once caused tension becomes a directional indicator. You feel where you are out of coherence, and by recognizing that mismatch, you naturally adjust your state. No forcing is needed. The recognition itself creates the shift. Contrast has always been your ally, quietly shaping your preferences and refining your inner frequency. Every time you encountered something unwanted, you simultaneously became aware of what you would prefer instead. That preference is a vibrational alignment waiting for you to meet it. The only reason contrast feels uncomfortable is because it highlights the gap between your current state and your natural expanded state. When you stop fighting the sensation and start receiving the message, the gap begins to close. And as the gap closes, the trajectory changes. The path you are truly aligned with becomes clearer through every moment of contrast. It is revealed not through analysis, but through feeling. You sense what drains you and what enlivens you. You sense what contracts you and what opens you. This sensitivity is your navigational system. It is how you tune yourself to the timeline that reflects your highest coherence. Seeing contrast from this perspective dissolves the belief that unwanted experiences are setbacks. They are not detours, they are calibrations. They refine you into the version of yourself capable of holding the frequency of the reality you desire. And as you allow contrast to do its work, you begin to feel a profound shift. You no longer fear misalignment. You recognize it. You adjust. You realign, and the field responds immediately because the path was never outside you. It was always being chosen through the clarity that contrast provides. Forcing is the attempt to command reality through tension. It is the belief that if you push hard enough, control enough variables, and hold on tightly enough, you can bend outcomes into compliance. But forcing is a contraction, and contraction collapses potential. It narrows the field, restricts flow, and locks you into versions of reality that match the very tension you are generating. The moment you stop forcing, something profound happens. The field opens. Possibilities reappear. Trajectories that were previously inaccessible come into view, not because you earned them, but because you stopped resisting them. Resistance is subtle. It often disguises itself as determination or discipline, but the body knows the difference. The mind pushes, the body tightens, the energy shrinks. This shrinking is the signal that you are working against the natural movement of the field. Control can only operate within the realm of the known. It cannot invite the unexpected. It cannot allow the non-linear. It can only repeat versions of what you have already lived. Forcing ties you to your past, allowing frees you into new timelines. When you release the need to control an outcome, you are not giving up your power. You are returning to it. Power does not arise from effort. It arises from alignment. And alignment is only accessible when you are soft enough to feel the difference between resistance and flow. In the absence of forcing, you become receptive. Receptivity is not passive. It is empowered openness. It signals to the field that you are ready to interact with possibilities beyond your mind's current understanding. This is why breakthroughs often happen in moments of surrender. Not because surrender magically attracts what you want, but because surrender dissolves the tension that was blocking what was already available. When you stop gripping the trajectory can reveal itself. When you stop insisting on how things must unfold, the field can show you how they can unfold. The shift is immediate. because the resistance was the only obstruction. Allowing is not inaction. It is clarity without tension. It is intention without strain. It is willingness without fear. In allowing, your state becomes coherent, and coherence has a magnetic quality. It draws the non-linear, the unexpected, the accelerated. Allowing says yes to the intelligence of the field rather than confining it to the limitations of the mind. You may notice that the moment you stop forcing, your internal space expands. Options appear that you couldn't see before. A sense of ease returns. This ease is not laziness, it is resonance. It indicates that you have stepped out of contraction and into alignment. And alignment is what selects the timeline. The mind believes that effort creates movement, but effort often creates friction. Movement arises when tension is released. Your reality shifts not because you push, but because you allow. Not because you strain, but because you open. The moment you stop forcing, you reconnect with the natural flow of the field. And in that flow, the non-linear becomes possible. Outcomes that once felt distant begin to approach. Possibilities that once felt blocked begin to unfold. This is the power of release. This is the doorway to non-linear change. Identity is not a description of who you have been. It is the vibrational anchor that determines which version of reality can interact with you now. Every timeline corresponds to a different state of being, and the identity you embody in this moment is the tuning fork that selects the trajectory you experience. This is why repeating the same actions without shifting your state produces the same outcomes. Doing does not select timelines. Being does. You are always broadcasting a frequency through the assumptions you hold about yourself. These assumptions can be subtle, quiet, and deeply familiar, yet they shape your reality with absolute precision. If you believe you are someone who must work hard to receive anything, you tune into a timeline where effort is required. If you believe you are someone who is supported, you tune into a reality that reflects that support. The field does not respond to your words. It responds to your identity. It mirrors the state you occupy, not the intentions you speak. Identity is not formed through affirmation. It is revealed through recognition. You do not become a new version of yourself by trying to act differently. You become that version by acknowledging a deeper truth that was already present within you. Recognition reorganizes your state. It dissolves contradiction. And when contradiction dissolves, coherence emerges. Coherence is what signals the field. This is why trying to convince yourself of a new identity through force or repetition often fails. The mind may repeat a new label, but the frequency remains tied to the old one. Real shifts come from seeing, not forcing. When you shift your identity, even slightly, your reality begins responding immediately. You may feel the ground beneath you change. You may notice that certain paths lose their attraction while others begin to open. This is not imagination. It is resonance. The field is rearranging itself around the state you are now holding. And because identity is the deepest expression of your frequency, its influence extends far beyond what any action can accomplish. Doing-based creation keeps you striving, adjusting, and reacting to circumstances. It assumes you must build your path piece by piece. But being-based selection bypasses all of that. When you embody the identity aligned with the timeline you desire, you no longer need to chase the path. The path begins to meet you. Opportunities arise that match your state. Insights appear that you could not have strategized. Solutions arrive without effort. This is not magic. It is coherence. You may notice that when your identity is stable and aligned, you no longer question whether things will unfold. You feel the inevitability of the trajectory you've tuned to. Doubt dissolves, not because you convinced yourself to be confident, but because your identity and your desire are now in harmony. There is no gap to bridge, no struggle to overcome, no timeline to chase. Being has already selected it. Identity is the anchor. Identity is the selector. And when you shift your identity, reality shifts with you. Choice is not the linear act you have been taught to imagine. It is not selecting an option from a list. It is not deciding what you want and then moving toward it through effort and time. In a quantum field, choice is vibrational. It is the alignment of your state with a specific version of reality. Each state of consciousness corresponds to a distinct timeline, and the moment your state shifts, the timeline you are aligned with shifts as well. You are not choosing outcomes. You are choosing states, and states choose outcomes for you. This is why two people can make the same decision, yet experience entirely different results. The decision itself carries no power unless it is backed by the state that matches the desired trajectory. A decision made from fear leads to a timeline that reflects fear. A decision made from clarity leads to a timeline that reflects clarity. It is never the choice alone. It is the consciousness behind it. The field is responding to the frequency of the chooser, not the logic of the choice. You are constantly shifting between versions of reality as your state changes. These shifts are often subtle, unnoticed by the mind, but unmistakable to the field. A moment of doubt can align you with a trajectory where things feel blocked. A moment of recognition can align you with a trajectory where everything accelerates. The mind interprets these changes as fluctuations in circumstances. Awareness recognizes them as quantum selections. When you shift your identity, you are not just improving yourself, you are entering a different universe altogether. A universe that corresponds to the version of yourself you are embodying. This is not metaphor. It is mechanics. Your identity is the vibrational signature that determines which reality becomes available. Each identity lives inside its own landscape of possibilities. When you shift who you believe yourself to be, you shift which landscape you can access. The quantum nature of choice means that what you experience next is not determined by your past, but by the state you occupy now. Your history does not anchor you unless you carry its frequency forward. Your past does not limit your future unless you identify with the version of yourself who lived it. When you release that identity, the timeline connected to it dissolves. A new one becomes available instantly, selected by the state you now hold. This understanding removes the need to control outcomes through strategy. Strategy can only work within the confines of the timeline you are currently in. But identity shifts transcend strategy. They move you into entirely new fields of probability. You do not have to solve every problem in your current timeline. You can shift to the version of yourself who lives in a reality where the problem does not exist. This is not avoidance. It is alignment. Choices made from identity are powerful because they are coherent. They carry the full weight of your state. They signal to the field with clarity. The moment you choose from being rather than from fear or lack, the universe you step into reflects that being. The timeline adjusts. The path reconfigures. The field responds. Choice is quantum. And when you understand this, you stop trying to force outcomes and start shifting states. You stop trying to navigate timelines and start selecting them. Predictability is a product of linear thinking. It is the attempt to project the future based on the past, to assume that what has been will determine what can be. But when you step out of the belief that life moves in straight lines, predictability collapses. And in that collapse, something extraordinary becomes available. You begin to experience reality not as a sequence you must anticipate, but as a field you are constantly shaping through your state. The dissolution of predictability is not the emergence of chaos, it is the emergence of coherence. It is the space where the field can respond to you directly without being filtered through the limitations of your expectations. Expectations come from memory. They come from what you have already lived, what you have already seen, what you have already assumed about yourself and your path. When you expect the future to resemble the past, you bind yourself to the frequency that created the past. This is why predictability feels safe to the mind, but restrictive to the deeper sense within you. Predictability is repetition, and repetition prevents expansion. When linearity collapses, repetition no longer governs your trajectory. Alignment does. Unpredictability is not instability. Unpredictability is openness. It is the willingness to allow the field to reveal possibilities you could not have imagined from your previous state. It is the recognition that your next moment does not have to be an extension of your last. The mind fears this because the mind equates the unknown with risk. But awareness recognizes the unknown as the space where higher coherence can emerge. The unknown is not an empty void. It is a reservoir of timelines your mind has not yet had access to. When you abandon the need for predictability, you stop directing your path through expectation and begin sensing it through resonance. You no longer ask, "What should happen next?" You ask, "What expands me now?" This shift dissolves the illusion of control and replaces it with a deeper intelligence. Expansion becomes your compass. Coherence becomes your guide, and the path begins to move in ways that feel alive, responsive, and aligned. The collapse of predictability is the collapse of the belief that the future must follow a logical sequence. But sequences belong to the mind. Possibilities belong to the field. When the mind releases its grip on how things must unfold, the field can respond directly to your state without distortion. This is why so many breakthroughs, opportunities, and shifts appear to come out of nowhere. They do not arise from nowhere. They arise from coherence. They enter the moment you stop confining the future to what you already know. As predictability dissolves, you enter a different relationship with your life. You stop strategizing and start allowing. You stop forecasting and start feeling. You stop trying to stay ahead of the future and begin meeting it in real time. This presence creates a pathway for outcomes that your linear mind could never have plotted. The path becomes fluid. The timeline becomes responsive. The field becomes immediate. Unpredictability is not a threat. It is a sign that you are no longer living inside the constraints of your past. It is a doorway into a reality shaped by coherence rather than habit. And once you step through it, life no longer feels like something unfolding ahead of you. It feels like something arising from you. Coherence is not a mental state. It is a vibrational harmony that arises when your thoughts, emotions, and identity align into a single, unified frequency. This coherence creates a magnetic effect, not metaphorically, but energetically. When you enter coherence, the field around you reorganizes with surprising speed. External conditions that once felt immovable become fluid. Situations that once required effort begin to shift on their own. This is because coherence amplifies your signal. It strengthens the instruction you are sending into the field, and the field responds with precision. Most people live in internal contradiction. Their desires point in one direction, while their beliefs point in another. Their emotions oscillate between expansion and contraction. Their identity shifts between clarity and doubt. In this state of fragmentation, the signal they send is mixed, and the field reflects that mixture. But coherence dissolves fragmentation. It simplifies your vibrational signature into something unmistakable. When the field encounters that unified signal, it adjusts instantly to match it. Coherence is not achieved through discipline. It arises naturally when resistance is released, when you stop forcing, when you stop trying to manage outcomes, and when you allow yourself to settle into the state that already feels true. Coherence is a return to inner congruence. It is the state in which your body relaxes, your mind quiets, and your awareness expands. In that expansion, the field becomes highly responsive. What once seemed impossible suddenly begins to move. This responsiveness is not linear. It is not gradual. It does not unfold step by step. Coherence creates non-linear shifts because it aligns you with timelines that bypass your previous limitations. You can feel this when you are in alignment. Things accelerate, new pathways appear, synchronicities multiply, solutions arise without effort. These are not coincidences. They are reflections of the magnetic quality of an aligned state. When you are coherent, you are not broadcasting from lack or fear. You are broadcasting from recognition. The field responds to that recognition immediately, not later, not eventually. The shift in your state selects the new trajectory the moment it happens. External rearrangement is simply the visible expression of an internal movement that has already occurred. You may notice that coherence has a stabilizing quality. It removes the need for prediction because you no longer rely on sequence to guide you. Instead, you rely on resonance. You sense when something matches your state and when it does not. You are drawn naturally to what aligns and repelled naturally from what does not. This organic movement places you on the timeline that mirrors your coherence without the need for planning. Coherence is magnetic because it is whole. It carries no internal contradiction, and wholeness is attractive in the field. It pulls matching potentials toward you. It dissolves pathways that no longer reflect your state. It amplifies the non-linear by allowing the field to interact with your energy directly, without distortion. When you cultivate coherence, you enter a new relationship with reality. You stop trying to manage the external world and begin shaping your internal world. And because the field mirrors the internal, the external rearranges as a natural consequence. This is the power of magnetic coherence. It is not effort, it is alignment. It is not control, it is clarity. And through that clarity, reality shifts in ways the linear mind could never have predicted. Instant reflection is not a rare exception. It is the natural behavior of a field that is no longer being filtered through linear assumptions. The only reason reality ever appeared to take time was because you believed it had to. You believed outcomes needed steps, progress, and sequence. But when you release the idea that creation is bound to chronology, the field is free to mirror your state immediately, not symbolically, not gradually, directly. The field does not wait, it does not calculate, it does not delay to see whether you are ready. It reflects the identity you are embodying right now. When you shift into a coherent state, reality begins adjusting the moment your frequency stabilizes. You can feel the difference internally before anything external even moves. Something clicks, something aligns, something opens, and that internal shift is the change. The external world simply expresses it. Instant reflection becomes natural when you stop assuming that the past must influence the present. The past only persists when your frequency continues to resonate with it. The moment the resonance changes, the mirror changes. This is why patterns can dissolve with surprising speed. This is why opportunities can appear without warning. This is why the trajectory of your life can pivot in a single moment of clarity. The field is not bound by time. It is bound by vibration. You have experienced this before in moments when something shifted inside you so completely that the world responded almost immediately. You may have called it coincidence or luck, but it was coherence. It was alignment. It was the field receiving a clear signal for the first time after being distorted by resistance, doubt, or contradiction. Once clarity emerges, the field no longer has to navigate interference. It simply reflects. Instant reflection does not mean everything manifests visibly the moment you think it. It means the timeline shifts immediately, and the external reality begins to rearrange around that new selection. Sometimes the rearrangement is obvious, sometimes it is subtle, but the shift itself is immediate. The moment you become the version of yourself who belongs to a particular timeline, that timeline becomes active. This responsiveness is not fragile. It is not rare. It is the default behavior of a nonlinear field. It is only the mind, with its attachment to process and prediction, that interrupts it. When you let go of the need to manage how things unfold, when you stop gripping the sequence and allow the field to respond freely, you begin to see how quickly reality can shift, not because you forced it, but because you allowed it. Instant reflection is the reminder that you are not waiting for your life to change. You are selecting the state that changes it. The field does the rest. There is no distance between who you are and what you experience. The moment your identity shifts, the mirror shifts. The moment your frequency changes, the reflection changes. And the more you release linear assumptions, the more undeniable this becomes. Reality is not slow. It is immediate. It has always been immediate. And when you align with this understanding, you begin living in a world that responds to you as quickly as you respond to yourself. You are never moving along a single predetermined path. You are standing within a field of parallel possibilities, each one responding to the frequency you hold in this moment. The mind wants to map these paths, to analyze outcomes, to predict which direction will lead where. But prediction belongs to linear thinking, and linear thinking cannot perceive the multidimensional nature of your trajectory. You do not navigate multiple paths through logic. You navigate them through resonance. Every potential trajectory has a distinct energetic texture. Some feel open, spacious, expanding. Others feel heavy, contracting, or subtly off. These sensations are not emotional reactions to circumstances. They are vibrational indicators of alignment. Expansion means the path matches your state. Contraction means it does not. When you learn to trust these signals, you move through reality with a kind of clarity the mind can never create. You shift from guessing to sensing, from planning to knowing. The aligned path is not always the most comfortable, but it always feels coherent. It carries a sense of inner yes, even if you do not fully understand why. The misaligned path often looks logical, practical, or familiar, yet it carries a quiet strain, a subtle tightening, a feeling of pushing against something unseen. This tension is the field telling you that this path belongs to a frequency you are no longer holding. You do not need to analyze the tension. You only need to recognize it. Intuitive resonance is not mystical. It is mechanical. It is your system responding to the vibrational match between your current state and the potentials available. The more present you are, the clearer these signals become. When you are lost in thought or controlled by expectation, the signals blur. The mind overlays its preferences and fears onto the field, making everything feel confusing. But when you return to presence, the distinctions reappear effortlessly. The aligned path feels like ease. The misaligned path feels like resistance. You are not choosing between good and bad timelines. You are choosing between coherent and incoherent ones. The coherent timeline supports your current identity. The incoherent one contradicts it. When you follow coherence, your path becomes fluid. When you follow contradiction, your path becomes tangled. But the field is never punishing you. It is guiding you. Every sensation is feedback. Every moment of contraction is information. And every moment of expansion is an invitation. As you learn to trust resonance over prediction, your movement through life changes. You no longer need to see the entire path. You only need to feel the next step. Each aligned step tunes you more deeply to the timeline that reflects your highest state. Each misaligned step simply shows you where you have slipped out of coherence. There is no danger in choosing wrong. The field reroutes instantly the moment you realign. This is not trial and error. It is vibrational navigation. The key is to stop forcing clarity and start allowing it. When you quiet the analytical mind and listen to the deeper sense within you, the path becomes unmistakable. You feel what is yours and what is not. You feel what opens and what closes. And through these sensations, you navigate not by prediction but by presence, not by logic but by alignment, not by mapping the future, but by tuning to the frequency that selects it. This is how you move through multiple potential trajectories with confidence. You feel your way not because feeling is soft or vague, but because resonance is the most accurate guidance system you have. There is a version of you that already lives the outcome you desire, not in the future, not at the end of some long path, but in the timeless field that surrounds you now. This version of you is not waiting to be created through effort or discipline. It exists as a vibrational possibility, fully formed, fully coherent, fully accessible the moment you tune into its frequency. The shift is not about becoming someone new. It is about recognizing the version of yourself that already holds the alignment you are seeking. When you sense this version, something inside you responds immediately. There is a quiet familiarity, a recognition that feels like remembering rather than imagining. This is because identity is not constructed in time. Identity is chosen in the present. And when you choose the identity that already lives the outcome, you activate the timeline that corresponds to it. You are not reaching forward. You are aligning inward. The mind wants to turn this into a process, a set of steps, a journey of self-improvement. But the field does not operate through sequence. It operates through resonance. Embodiment is not about acting as if. It is about feeling the truth of the identity you are tuning to. When you touch that feeling, even briefly, your state shifts. And when your state shifts, the timeline shifts. This is immediate. Even if the external rearrangement unfolds gradually, you have felt glimpses of this before. Moments when you suddenly knew you could no longer behave as the old version of yourself. Moments when the resonance of a new identity was so strong that old patterns simply fell away. That ease was not coincidence. It was coherence. You had touched the identity that already lived the outcome, and in doing so, you stepped onto its trajectory. Embodiment is not pretending. It is claiming. It is the inner declaration that says, "This is who I am now." Without strain, without argument, without needing proof from the external world. Proof comes after alignment, not before. Reality mirrors identity, not the other way around. The moment you stabilize the identity, the field begins reshaping itself to match it. People respond differently. Opportunities appear. Desires shift. Not because you forced change, but because you aligned with the version of yourself who naturally generates that reality. The key is to feel the state of the identity, not the details of the outcome. Outcomes are expressions. Identity is the source. When you tune into the identity that already lives the outcome, you feel a different way of being, more open, more grounded, more certain, more expansive. That feeling is the signature of the timeline you are selecting. Hold the feeling gently, without gripping it. Let it saturate your awareness until it becomes familiar. Familiarity is the signal that you have stabilized the frequency. You are not creating the future. You are stepping into the version of yourself for whom that future is already the present. This shift collapses the sense of distance you once felt. The outcome is no longer ahead of you, it is within you. And when you embody the identity that already lives it, the field has no choice but to reflect it. This is how timelines are chosen. This is how outcomes become now. Progress is one of the most persistent illusions created by linear thinking. You have been conditioned to believe that growth happens along a path, that you must move from where you are to some improved version of yourself, step by step, over time. But in a non-linear field, growth is not movement. Growth is recognition. It is the moment you realize that what you were seeking was already present within you, waiting for awareness to meet it. Presence collapses the entire framework of sequential improvement because it reveals that nothing stands between you and alignment except the belief that something does. When you release the idea of progress, you stop evaluating yourself against imagined milestones. You stop measuring how far you have come or how far you have left to go. These measurements belong to a timeline that exists only in the mind. Presence exists outside of that timeline. Presence reveals that every quality you associate with growth, clarity, openness, empowerment, coherence, arises in the moment you embody it, not after you have earned it through time. The moment you recognize a truth, you become the version of yourself who lives by it. Recognition is instantaneous. It is the dissolution of resistance, the settling into what was always true. Sequential improvement assumes that you are incomplete. Presence shows you that the incompleteness was never real. It was only a misunderstanding created by identifying with a limited version of yourself. When you enter presence, the idea that you must become something falls away. You feel the sufficiency of who you are now. And from that sufficiency, change arises naturally, not as progress, but as expression. Change becomes the unfolding of alignment, not the pursuit of worthiness. This shift transforms the way you relate to your life. You stop chasing outcomes as if they are ahead of you. You begin sensing them as potentials that respond to your current state. You stop trying to perfect yourself. You start recognizing the coherence that emerges when you stop resisting your own nature. Presence is not passive. It is the most powerful state you can inhabit because it removes the distortion created by projection and memory. When those distortions quiet, you can feel the field directly. You can sense what resonates and what does not. You move through life with clarity instead of striving. The belief in progress slows you down. It keeps you waiting for future versions of yourself to grant you permission to live in alignment. But presence gives you immediate access to the identity that matches your highest trajectory. You do not step into that identity through achievement. You step into it through awareness. Awareness dissolves the gap between who you believe you are and who you actually are beneath the layers of conditioning. As you shift from progress to presence, you discover that there is nothing to chase. There is only a deeper recognition of what is already true. And the moment you recognize it, your state shifts. When your state shifts, your trajectory shifts. Presence selects the timeline that progress tries to reach. Presence collapses distance. Presence makes alignment immediate. This is the end of striving. This is the beginning of being. Allowing is often misunderstood as passivity, but in a non-linear field, allowing is one of the most powerful states you can enter. Allowing expands your vibrational range. It opens the space in which the field can reveal possibilities that effort could never access. Effort narrows your trajectory by locking you into the timeline that matches your strain. Allowing widens your trajectory by inviting the timelines that match your openness. It is not a withdrawal from creation. It is a surrender of resistance, and resistance is the only thing that ever blocks the path. When you allow, you release the need to control the shape, speed, and sequence of your life. You stop gripping the outcome. You stop insisting that things must unfold according to your mental structure. This release creates an immediate shift in your frequency. The contraction that comes from forcing dissolves, and the field responds to the spaciousness that takes its place. The moment you open, the field expands around you. Possibilities that were previously inaccessible begin to come into range, not because they suddenly appeared, but because your state can finally perceive them. Allowing is not a lack of intention. It is intention without tension. It is clarity without strain. It is the recognition that the field can organize outcomes more intelligently than the mind ever could. When you allow, you stop navigating reality through willpower and begin navigating it through resonance. You feel the difference between paths that flow and paths that constrict. You notice the subtle signals of expansion that arise when you are aligned. You move with those signals not because you are following a plan, but because you are following coherence. This openness creates a profound shift in the timeline you inhabit. Effort ties you to the trajectory that matches your struggle. Allowing moves you into the trajectory that matches your clarity. The difference is felt immediately. You begin to sense that life is not pushing against you. It is meeting you. The field becomes responsive in a way the linear mind cannot comprehend. You find yourself in situations that feel synchronistic, interactions that feel aligned, steps that feel guided rather than calculated. This is not luck. It is alignment interacting with an expanded field of possibility. When you allow, you stop closing the door on higher timelines. You stop constraining reality to what you think is possible. You open the space for outcomes that your previous state could not reach. Effort can only produce what already exists in your mind. Allowing invites what exists beyond it. This is why allowing leads to outcomes that feel accelerated, unexpected, and deeply resonant. The field is responding to your openness, not to your pressure. You may notice that allowing feels like breathing deeply after holding your breath. There is relief, spaciousness, and a subtle certainty. Certainty not of how things will unfold, but that they will unfold in alignment with the state you are holding. Allowing removes friction. It brings you into coherence with the timeline that reflects your highest resonance. And in that coherence, movement happens effortlessly. Timeline selection is not achieved through control. It is achieved through openness. You attract the widest spectrum of possibilities when you stop restricting the field with force. Allowing is the doorway. Openness is the signal. And the moment you embody them, the path reveals itself in ways effort could never create. Reality is not reflecting your thoughts, your intentions, or your words. It is reflecting your state, your frequency, your embodied vibration. This reflection is immediate, precise, and consistent, though the mind often overlooks it by searching for linear explanations. But the field is not responding to logic. It is responding to resonance. Every moment of your life is a mirror showing you the state you are holding, not as judgment, but as feedback. This feedback is the mechanism through which you navigate timelines. When you understand this, you stop treating reality as something happening to you. You begin to see it as something arising from you. The mirror does not distort. It does not delay. It shows your current alignment with perfect fidelity. If your state is coherent, the reflection feels harmonious. If your state is fragmented, the reflection feels chaotic. Reality is not punishing or rewarding you. It is informing you. It is revealing your frequency in visible form. This is why two people in the same situation can experience completely different realities. Their external conditions are identical, but their states are not. The state determines the path. The state selects the timeline. The state shapes what becomes possible. Logic cannot do this. Strategy cannot do this. Only vibration can. The field responds to what you are being, not what you are trying to be. When you accept reality as an immediate mirror, you gain immense clarity. You no longer wonder why certain patterns repeat or why certain opportunities appear. You look inward, not to analyze, but to sense. Are you expanded or contracted? Open or resistant? Allowing or controlling? These distinctions are subtle, but they are everything. They determine which version of reality you are interacting with at any given moment. The mirror becomes most powerful when you stop resisting it. Resistance interprets the reflection as a problem. Awareness interprets it as guidance. When something feels out of alignment in your external world, it is not a sign that you are failing. It is a sign that your state is being revealed so you can realign. The moment you shift your frequency, the mirror shifts. This is not metaphorical, it is mechanical. The field reorganizes around your new state with precision. You may notice that when you try to fix external circumstances without shifting your internal state, nothing changes, or changes feel temporary. But when you shift your vibration first, circumstances adjust naturally. This is because the mirror is not moved by effort, it is moved by frequency. You cannot manipulate the reflection without shifting the source. Once you shift the source, the reflection has no choice but to follow. This understanding frees you from attempting to predict or control the future. Prediction is unnecessary when reality reflects your state immediately. Control becomes irrelevant when coherence shapes your path effortlessly. Timelines are not chosen through planning. They are chosen through vibration, and your vibration is felt, not thought. The more you honor reality as your mirror, the more empowered you become. You stop waiting for signs. You stop waiting for timing. You stop waiting for proof. You read your state directly. You shift intentionally, and the mirror shifts every time. This is the intelligence of the field. This is the simplicity of alignment. This is how reality responds to you, immediately, consistently, unmistakably. There comes a moment on this path where concepts fall away, techniques dissolve, and even the desire to shift timelines quiets. What remains is a deeper recognition, a remembering that does not require effort or practice. It is the knowing that you are not a small self navigating a vast external world. You are the consciousness in which all trajectories appear. You are the field itself, not a traveler within it. And when linearity dissolves, this becomes unmistakably clear. You begin to sense that you were never moving through time. Time was moving through you. You were never selecting outcomes from the outside. Outcomes were arising as reflections of the state you held within. Every shift, every realization, every moment of clarity was not you reaching for something. It was you rediscovering the vastness you had momentarily forgotten. The more you return to this knowing, the more natural alignment becomes. You stop trying to shape the world and begin allowing the world to reveal what matches your state. Creation becomes a process of recognition, not pursuit. This remembering is subtle but powerful. It shows you that you have never been separate from the outcomes you desired. You have never been distant from your higher timeline. You have always been the one generating the field in which all versions of reality exist. When you feel this, even briefly, identity loosens. The old sense of self, the one built on history, expectation, and limitation, no longer feels like the center of your experience. Something wider steps forward, something quieter, something infinitely more stable. This is not a new identity. It is the one beneath all identities. It is the awareness that perceives without needing to define, the presence that remains unchanged regardless of your shifting emotional states, the consciousness that witnesses all timelines without being bound to any of them. From this place, life becomes simpler, not because challenges disappear, but because you stop interpreting them as obstacles. You see them as reflections, as guidance, as invitations back into alignment. When you stand in the knowing, you no longer fear misalignment. You recognize it instantly, adjust effortlessly, and return to coherence without struggle. You no longer chase outcomes because you feel the truth that all outcomes emerge from the same source, your state of being. There is nothing to prove, nothing to earn, nothing to achieve through force. Creation becomes an unfolding rather than a mission. It becomes an expression of your presence rather than a compensation for your perceived lack. Returning to the knowing means returning to the awareness that you are consciousness, choosing itself in every moment. You are the still point from which infinite trajectories radiate, and every trajectory you walk becomes a mirror of the state you hold. When linearity dissolves, the future is no longer ahead of you. It is within you. The past is no longer behind you. It is a resonance you can release. Everything becomes now. Everything becomes accessible. This closing is not an ending, it is a return to the truth that has always been waiting beneath the noise. You are the source, the field, the awareness in which all realities unfold. And from this knowing, life can only reflect your coherence, your clarity, and your remembering. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button so more people can get around this knowledge.